Let us pray. Almighty God, the creator and ruler of heaven and earth, we beseech thee to inspire and guide all our actions so that we may always walk in the path of justice, love, and charity to one another. Help us with thy grace to do only those things that promote the unity, peace, happiness, and prosperity of Nigeria in general, and Lagos State in particular. Amen. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. You are welcome to today's sitting. Let us go through the votes and proceedings of Friday, 8th November 2019. Page 42, page 43. Honorable Victor Kone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On page 43, the apex leader of Ojo was not mentioned. The apex leader of Ojo was not written down. Alajolon for me. Thank you, sir.
Page 44. Page 45. Four, six. I have examined the votes and proceedings of Friday, 8th November 2019, and approval is here granted. Any message from the governor?
Right, Honorable Speaker, distinguished honorable members, there is no message from Mr. Governor.
Any other announcements?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to announce the presence of the following at the gallery to observe the House proceedings. We have 29 students of Graceland Heights Private School, located at Plot A, Block HY, Sparklight Estate, opposite Opik, Isheri, Ogun State, led by Mr. Adeleye Felix, Mrs. Ademofe Adekemi, and Mr. Ibrahim Bolaji. Also have 23 members of Lagos State Local Government Clerks Forum, located at 198 Abat Macaulay Way, Adekunle, Yaba, Lagos State, led by Mr. Omoteji Shakiruddin, O President, and Mr. Shitu G.A., General Secretary. That's all, sir.
Petition,
None, Mr. Speaker, sir.
matter of urgent public importance, non-personal explanations, none. Reports. Honorable Eshilogun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From Wednesday 13th and Friday 15th of November 2019, we attended the third annual summit of the Legislative Network on universal health coverage at the Lagos Social Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. So many issues were discussed, and there were certain observations. Observations include the absence of health agenda to guide legislative actions towards achieving universal health coverage across the country. Some aspects of the guideline for managing basic health care provision fund are not in consonance with the National Health Act. The current level of resources, human equipment infrastructure also militate against achievement of universal health coverage in the country. And also, they also observed that the payment for care at the point of use causes a lot of financial hardship to those who seek health care, and thus discouraging them from accessing health. It was also, in view of the above, it was resolved that there should be finalization and implementation of legislative health agenda at national and state level towards achieving universal health coverage. There was also going to be intergovernmental relationship, the private sector, development partner, and the civil society organization, in addition to institutionalizing processing for ensuring that every Nigerian is able to access full range of health services at all levels. And thirdly, ensuring all financial risks associated with seeking care are mitigated. It was also advised in terms of appropriation that there should be increased appropriation to the basic health care provision fund. Everybody should also work towards increasing Ministry of Health budget. And thirdly, ensuring that the 1% equity fund is statutory. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I went in with my colleagues, Honorable S.O.B. Agumbiade, who is the majority leader, Honorable Shokunle, the chairman of Health, Committee on Health, Mr. Assis Sonny, the clerk of the House, Mr. Motayo, secretary to Committee on Health, and we were joined, the Lagos State contingent was joined by Dr. Adejare, who is the deputy chairman for Committee on Health at the House of Representatives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, majority leader. Sorry, before business of the day, let me quickly recognize the presence of 29 students of Graceland Heights Private School, located at Plot A, Block HY, Sparklight Estate, opposite Opiki Sheri, Ogun State, led by Mr. Adeleye Felix, Mrs. Ademofe Adekemi, and Mr. Ibrahim Bolaji. You are welcome. 23 members of Lagos State Local Government Clerk Forum, located at 198 Abat Macaulay Way, Adekunle, Yaba, Lagos State, led by Mr. Omoteji Shakiruddin, O President, Mr. Shita G.A., General Secretary. You are all welcome. We thank you for coming. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, myself and my colleagues, namely Honorable Jimo OW, Honorable Elliot DO, Engineer Yishao GOR, Honorable Kasumu AR, Honorable Tobu MA, Honorable Adams MB, Honorable Mrs. Ali Macaulay KM, Honorable Sonny GBO, come together to present this motion calling for prosecution of perpetrators of indiscriminate refuse dumping across the state. We posit that this House notes the challenges of refuse disposal and other environmental related issues in the state. Also notes the effort of the executive and the legislative arms of government towards tackling the environmental challenges, particularly refuse disposal. Further notes the Spate of Enlightenment campaign by the government and the Lagos Waste Management Agency, LOMA, urging residents to desist from dumping refuse at unauthorized places across the state. Is worried that in spite of these campaigns against indiscriminate dumping of refuse, and whereas refuse dumped at unauthorized spots across the state are frequently cleared by respective local government council and private sector participants, PSP operators, some unscrupulous individuals continue to dump refuse at unauthorized places. Is more worried that funds and administrative efforts that could have been expended on other sectors are concentrated on the clearing of refuse dumped indiscriminately. Whereas the combined effect of Section 1154 and 116, Part 5, Environmental Sanitation, Statutory Nuisances and Litters, as well as Section 81, Part 3, Lagos Waste Management Authority, LOMA, of the Environmental Management and Protection Law 2017, prohibit dumping of refuse at undesignated places with specific sanctions, and is convinced that if the perpetrators of this indiscriminate refuse dumping are arrested, prosecuted, and sanctioned for offenses provided in the relevant sections of the laws aforementioned, deterrence will be accomplished and sanity shall return to our streets. In respect of the foregoing, the House resolved to call on Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu, Governor of Lagos State, to direct the Commissioner for Ministry of the Environment to 1. Ensure the enforcement of the relevant sections of Environmental Management and Protection Law 2017 with regards to indiscriminate disposal of refuse across the state, and 2. Ensure that perpetrators of unlawful refuse disposal are sanctioned with community service sentencing directed at refuse clearing within the locality of the offense. And the B part of the prayer is for the governor to persuade the Chief Judge of Lagos State to direct magistrates that where community sentencing is applicable as sanctions for any other offenses listed in Schedule 1 of the Special Offenses, Section 1, Schedule 1 of the Special Offenses Court Law, Chapter S8, Laws of Lagos State 2015, the magistrate presiding over the case to direct the sanctions towards refuse clearing within the locality of the offense so as to help deal with refuse problem in the state for the time being. Mr. Speaker, these are prayers I so move. Thank you.
Honorable B.C. Yusuf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand up to support the motion as rightly moved.
All in favor say aye. Those against no. The ayes have it. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to state that the import of this motion
is to accomplish the following things. One, to give teeth to the law and the sanctions prescribed for offenses against indiscriminate dumping of refuse in the state, to make effective the principle of community sentencing, and 3, to ensure that those who perpetrate indiscriminate dumping of refuse in the state are shamed and embarrassed by the law. Mr. Speaker, we are all living witnesses to the situation in the state, and the effort of the executive arm of the government through radio, television, announcements. This House of Assembly also at the last community engagement stakeholders meeting dedicated the meeting towards a cleaner environment by preaching against indiscriminate dumping of refuse and flooding, which are related. Notwithstanding this, Mr. Speaker, we see that efforts getting local government to clear refuse in the state, once the refuse are cleared, the following morning, you see the refuse littering the place. There are some people who are responsible for this, not ghosts. And whereas there are provisions of the law that sanctions should be made against these people, the relevant sections of the law appear not enforced. So we feel that the law should not just display its teeth, the law must bite those who continue to do this. The idea we are bringing in, Mr. Speaker, with this motion is that the law in Lagos, the practice procedure in Lagos State gives discretion to magistrates in our courts to grant community service sentencing, where any offender once found guilty will be made to do some community service in the area and the locality. If there is this provision, then we should channel this provision towards clearing the refuse, so that instead of the government spending money to clear the refuse, those who perpetrate this act will be made to clear this refuse. And of course, under the Special Offenses Court law, there are some offenses listed under Section 1, Schedule 1, which goes beyond environmental offenses, where magistrates can also grant community service sentencing. We are also praying that in all of these offenses, for the time being, offenders could be made where community service sentencing is applicable to be directed towards clearing of refuse, where people will be made for 3 months, to the direction of the magistrates, when they could go within the community to clear refuse. If this is done, Mr. Speaker, we are persuaded by reasoning that it will deter people, because nobody wants to do all jobs along the street on the roads. If you are caught and you are sentenced, you are found guilty, you'll be made to do community sentencing, clearing refuse. I think this will be embarrassing to people, and people will desist from just throwing, because it appears that the idea is becoming unending, and we cannot continue that way. If there are laws, then we apply the law. That is the purpose of our prayers, Mr. Speaker, that we should deter people who do this, and we should continue to promote this community servicing. People that offend must also clean the community, and that's our prayer, and that's why I've come with this motion, Mr. Speaker. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the prime mover of this motion. Mr. Speaker, this is the right time to implement all what the prime mover of this motion. This is the right time to implement it. Mr. Speaker, about 4 days ago, I was going. A truck loaded with refuse from a renowned factory was parked at the median and packed all the refuse down to the median. And I caught the man red-handed. Mr. Speaker, I traced man, I allowed the man to pack almost 1 kilometer refuse into that ferry motor. But I cannot follow up I don't know where he will discharge it again. Mr. Speaker, apart from sentencing of people to work on community, they must have a uniform. Prisoner name. So they should have a uniform, a prisoner uniform, so that they will be able to, that they have been committed and they have to serve this in their locality. Their home should be their prison yard. Because if we take them to prison home, it's already congested and we will be feeding them. So we cannot continue to feed criminals. So, Mr. Speaker, that's just an emphasis that I want to lay, sir. That these people, the uniform, prisoner uniform must be sold to them. They must serve in their respective area, locality, so that they will be able to know. And the magistrate will be able to know, determine the length of the period to serve. But that uniform is highly very important because a prisoner is a prisoner. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Togo.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, we all know that health is wealth, and in a cleaner environment bring about a healthy environment. Despite government efforts and money expended on clearing of waste, our people have not changed their attitude. And we all know that attitudinal change, for a community to move forward, our attitude must be changed towards the way we do things. We are talking of millennium development, but our people still remain the old ways of depositing their waste. People dump waste into the drainage, roadside, median, and there were laws that were in place. Mr. Speaker, I feel those sections of the law that empower community servicing should be adhered to strictly, because even the shame that you've been caught to clean an environment, to sweep in the public domain, will be enough deterrent. And we all know that during Buhari and the Diagbon regime, when there were Kai, everybody, we became so cautious of the way we behave, because we were trying to evade the Kai men from arresting us. But now that those people were not there, let the environmental enforcement corps swing into actions. So whoever is caught should be made to sweep in the public. So any vehicle owner that is caught dumping refuse should use his car, no matter how flashy the car is, to pack refuse. You know, wearing uniform, I'm not against it, but packing refuse on the public, if possible, show it on the TV, let people see what they are doing. So at least that will be a deterrent. We will learn to do it. We've seen an experience where people in advanced world, where even when they are dog shit, they bring out handkerchief from their covers, from their bag, and take it. But not Nigerians. You see a car rider, a car owner, who will drop refuse from his car. A car owner will park and alert and drop refuse on the median. For how long are we going to continue using government funds that were supposed to mean for other good things? Student education, health, hospitals, for carrying of waste. So I'm in total support that whoever is caught should be made to sweep publicly. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Ayode.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also appreciate the mover of this motion. But, Mr. Speaker, I just want to call our attention to the existing law on this sanitation, what did I call it? Sanitation law, maybe we can say one law concerning this issue. Because now, what we are saying here, that there will be a day that someone will be caught dumping a refuse somewhere. And there is a particular section in that law, I don't know, the Honorable can assist me on that sanitation law, they have said stipulated measure and offenses concerning that any person. Maybe you should go to 3 years and pay some money. Then coming up again as a lawmaker, that the one we made the law here, now I'm bringing it back that there will be a time there is someone should now, we can persuade the magistrate that they should now ask them to sweep. Someone would prefer to sweep and rather going to jail and paying a certain money. But to me, as this motion is very beautiful, I think we should be careful that if we want to amend the law, let us amend the law. Let us put it inside the law that this certain punishment should be for the offender, anybody dumping refuse. But if you are coming up like we are the one made law, begging again, saying they should bend the rule or the offenses law. So I think that is the direction I'm calling our attention to. So we should look on it before we now say we are calling another motion for any magistrate, administrative judge to persuade the magistrate for this law. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Makinde.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have to really appreciate the prime mover of this motion. But it is very, very worrisome at this prime stage of Lagos State, where we are moving to a smart city, that how to really dispose our waste will be the issue we'll be discussing at this Hollow Chamber. However, urbanization has a lot of challenges, among which is the population. Everybody knows that daily, different people are coming to Lagos State with different backgrounds. And they're coming to Lagos, they have to really change to the way civilized people are living in Lagos State. Because I cannot imagine, especially during rainy, we will see people pouring their waste into the drainages. At the end of the day, this waste blocks our covert, and then we find water gushing out. And this leads to easy dilapidation of our roads, where we're having potholes all over the state today. I think urbanization has its own impact. But that notwithstanding, attitudinal change of our people is very, very paramount. We must be able to change. Some of us travel abroad, we see people in a Porsche car throwing waste into the highway. So it's very amazing. We must change our way. And the local government and SCDA, the local government, the environmental officers must come out. They should be able to monitor their domain thoroughly to ensure that whosoever that is putting the waste in an unjust way can easily be arrested and prosecuted. Then the lawman, they should be able to have their own monitoring team, because they are the regulator, to ensure the PSP operators are alive to their responsibilities. Some are just, distributing bills without necessarily cutting away waste. We have a lot of complaints and reports that some PSP are not even alive to the job or to the money Lagos State are paying to them. The lawman should go out and really monitor and ensure that those that are given license to cut away refuse are doing the job. And finally, our law should be implemented. We have a very robust law in Lagos State. The executive arm of the government, they should ensure that the law is well implemented so that it will not become an ordinary and academic exercise. Thank you very much.
Lastly, Kehinde Joseph.
Thank you, the Right Honorable Speaker, distinguished colleagues. I want to thank the prime mover of this motion in respect to what he has moved and to what others have said. I think in respect of the law, what I believe we need most is to strengthen the enforcement of that law. We have a very good and robust law that cater for all what everybody have said in respect of it, but the enforcement is lacking. So probably we need to think out towards that, how to enforce that law. I know when we started this thing then, most especially the CAI and the environmental officers in various local government, people have that fear. They don't just dump refuse anywhere. The same thing when you know that CAI is going to arrest you, people know they behave themselves very well. But nowadays, if to an extent, recently I have a very bad experience in respect of that. I told one of the council chairman in my area that there is a particular place very close to one primary school. They used to dump refuse there, and it has become a heap of refuse. And I said they should quickly go to that place and try to cut it away. And they did it. And I said, after cutting it away, try and put someone there so that whosoever that comes again to drop something there, they will try and get that person arrested. Unfortunately for them, the guy was beaten. So those people within that axis, they beat him. And I said, what are you people looking at? But the enforcement are not there. They reported that case to the station. They are saying, do you want us to now be standing there to arrest these people? If it is something like that, I've later told them what we can do. All those people residing in that area, they are culpable. By the time we were able to arrest 2 or 3 people, and they were punished, if possible, with what Honorable Bisi said, they should be given uniform to wear or to do community services. Maybe this thing can still assist us in reducing the excesses of what these our people are doing in respect of the refuse dumping. So it's very, very appalling. So what I want to say in conclusion is that we should try and strengthen the enforcement of that environmental laws. I believe with that, it will stop all this nonsense. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Majority Leader, do you want to clear the aspects mentioned by Honorable Layode?
Mr. Speaker, the aspect mentioned by Honorable Layode, I think there are precedents. There are precedents to that effect. I read a judgment, Mr. Speaker, recently, a case I cannot really...
Majority Leader, I can't really hear you.
I said the issue raised by Honorable Layode can be explained by a recent judgment at Igbo. I don't really have, it's even a criminal case of stealing. And in that case, of course, stealing has prescribed punishments. But in that case, instead of that prescription to be, what was awarded was community service sentencing. Mr. Speaker, where punishment entails imprisonment not more than 3 years, the magistrate presiding has a discretion whether to apply that or to commute to.
I don't think that was his question.
That's what he's saying, sir, that if the law has prescribed...
Majority Leader.
Sir?
The question from Layode, I think it has been answered by your motion. Yeah. Do we have that provision in that law? I mean, special offense court law, provision for, what is it called, community services. Do we have the provision?
Mr. Speaker, I am saying that it is a discretion of the magistrate as guided, as contained in the practice direction. And Mr. Speaker, recently, we have cases of people that committed a lot of traffic offenses. It was publicly displayed on the television. People that committed a lot of traffic offenses, they were not given the prescription as per the law, but they were all made to serve community sentencing. It is in the news. It is in the news, Mr. Speaker. It was in the news. A lot of them, like about 90-something people, they were made to serve community, they were given community sentencing. I am saying that despite what is in the law, practice direction gives magistrates the discretion to award community sentencing where they feel is applicable. The ones we have talked about, Section 1, Schedule 1, are other offenses for summary trial. And we are saying that matters under summary trial are lesser offenses that can be tried summarily. In case that we can try summarily, the magistrate presiding has discretion to grant. Is an alternative way, Mr. Speaker. I remember when we were reviewing this criminal procedure, admission of criminal justice in Lagos State, that was community sentencing came in, and it was introduced, Mr. Speaker, to make people, to decongest the court and make people serve the community more, to shame and embarrass people rather than just throwing them into the prison for congestion.
not answered the fear or addressed the fear of Honorable Layode. And I think its concern has to do with persuading. Do we have to appeal to Chief Judge to persuade a magistrate to decide? I quite agree with you that the magistrate can apply his or her discretion in every circumstance, but is it within our own reasonable purview to now direct Chief Judge to persuade? And I don't think. So what I'm asking, if you have it in the law, you have mentioned 2 laws in this motion. So if one has room for community service, well, we can rely on that we just call on the magistrate to ensure application of such provision in this circumstance. But where you have not, and that was why I asked you the question, I didn't expect you to go all over and over and over again, but just to address that area that we have the provision in the law, and that is enough.
Okay, so, Mr. Speaker, the word persuade is because we do not have the powers to call on the Chief Judge.
Likewise, we don't have to persuade the judge.
We are not to persuade. We are saying that the Chief Judge should persuade magistrates
we do
that...
not have right to persuade the Chief Judge, direct the Chief Judge to persuade. We do not have rights to direct the Chief Judge to persuade the magistrate. Majority Leader, can we amend that leg, or we drop it, we go with the first 2? Honorable Shao, I will hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to, as a member of this, that moves this motion, the Part B, what we're saying in Part B is that where the community sentencing is applicable as sanction, that community sentencing should be carried out within the locality, which are words that are not embedded in the law. Where the community sentencing, where the law says community sentencing, the magistrate could say, oh, they could go and do any community sentencing anywhere. So the part of this resolve is that so that the magistrate, in the cases where community sentencing is part of the sentencing, they should let them go and clear the refuse in the area where the offense is committed. So where the sentencing does not include community sentence, obviously it cannot be applicable in this case. So from the question of Honorable Layode, which is that if it is not part of the law, can we introduce it? Yes, we cannot introduce it if it is not part of the law. So, and the issue of using the word persuading or not persuading is just a way of saying that the community sentencing should be done in the area where
we
the
have
offense
it
is.
in the law. Do we have that provision, community sentencing?
Where it is available. Where it is available is what this motion is saying, sir. Thank you.
Honorable Osho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to bring our attention to something. If you look at the resolve, it says call on Mr. Baji Sanwo-Olu to Governor of Lagos State to direct the Commissioner for Ministry of Environment. I want to suggest that can't we just leave it with the first one, which is ensure the enforcement of the relevant section of environmental management and protection law. Because the other 2 is like you are asking the executive to direct or instruct the judiciary. If we decide to enforce the law as it is, the prerogative will be for the Chief Judge or the magistrate. But if we are asking the governor to direct the commissioner to, I think we should just leave it with the first one.
Thank
the
you.
first one should go.
G.B. Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also wanted to talk the line of the previous speaker. I think it's all about semantics, sir. When we start to talk about persuade, the manner and the language of using persuasion takes out from the discretion of a chief judge. So if it's already contained, and I think the understanding from the prime mover is to say that in the event there are 2 options, which is that it's either community sentencing or any applicable thing. that we should try to make sure, we should see that the community sentencing is the preferred one. However, the way it's been couched here, if we go by the word persuasion of the chief judge, it takes away from the discretion of the chief judge. And I think we should do away with that particular one, or see a way how we can recouch it to say that this is the preferred manner. However, again, if I think about it, it's taking away the discretion of the judge.
Honorable Bureau.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I don't have much to say away from what Honorable Oshun has said. I think it is just clear as it is in the law. There is no such provision in the law. Thank you very much, sir.
Honorable BC.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting me the opportunity again. Mr. Speaker, if we feel seriously that this is the only solution that can bring an end to this indiscriminating dumping of refuse, this House made the law. We can repeal the law. We can amend the law. We can include it so as to serve the purpose in which we are now canvassing.
The motion will wait till we amend the law.
Well, I think I think it's right, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Majority Leader, you can do with the last leg. You can make your prayers by adopting the first two. That is...
The first two, sir?
Yeah, A1, A2.
Okay, sir. Mr. Speaker, in view of the contributions in respect of the prayers to this motion, I wish to move that I wish to apply that the B part of the prayer be stepped down while we are left with A1 and A2, to wit that the House call on Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu, Governor of Lagos State, to direct the Commissioner for Ministry of the Environment to ensure the enforcement of the relevant sections of Environmental Management and Protection Law 2017 with regards to indiscriminate disposal of refuse across the state, and ensure that perpetrators of the unlawful refuse disposal are sanctioned with community service sentencing directed at refuse clearing within the locality of the offense. I so move.
Honorable Akoli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion as
All
moved.
in favor say aye. Those against nay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Kindly direct the result to the appropriate ministry. Yeah, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, I rise to move that Appropriation Bill 2020 be read for the second time. I so move.
Honorable Togo. All in favor say aye. Those against nay, the ayes have it. Mr. Clark.
Right, Honorable Speaker, distinguished honorable members, with your kind permission, I'll read for the second time a bill for a law to authorize the issue and appropriation of 445 billion 56 million 479,673 naira from the Consolidated Revenue Fund for Recurrent Expenditure and 723 billion 505 million 414,318 naira from Development Revenue Fund for Capital Expenditure, thereby totaling a budget size of 1,168,561,893,991 naira for the year ending 31st December 2020. Thank you, sir.
Who goes first? Honorable Fatai Majid.
Good afternoon, Right Honorable Speaker, my distinguished colleagues. I wish to commend Mr. Governor for his timely presentations of the year 2020 budget estimate. The proposed budget estimates focus on 6 major sectors of economy, namely transportation, health, entertainment, education, environment, and security. There is significant improvement on the percentage allocated to this sector, mentioned above, compared with the budget in operation. On the areas of internally generated revenue, he proposed an increase of 34.4% compared with 2019 approved budget. However, this proposed increase in IGR is achievable, provided they are ready to expand the revenue net to accommodate informal sector, because the state is losing a lot of revenue from this informal sector, and this sector alone can pay our finance requirements to the tune of 97.7 billion. In the summary page, a sum of 720 was proposed for the payment of severance for the political office holder in year 2019, and the same figure is being proposed again. I believe that some of us that served in the last administrations have received his or her severance. I don't see the need for this expenditure. On education, for state to be productive, a reasonable percentage of annual budget must be allocated to education sector. The United Nations proposed 25% of annual budget to be allocated to education sectors of individuals' nation. The proposed estimate allocated only 10.3% to this sector. Mr. Speakers and fellow colleagues, it was also discovered that microeconomic indicators such as the inflation rate, the unemployment rate, the price of the crude oil, and GDP, etc., are not attached to the proposed budget estimate. There is a need for the executive to make it available because budgets are prepared based on macroeconomic indicators. The percentage between the investment expenditures and recurrent expenditure is on a scale of 62 to 38% compared with the approved budget 2019. This is an indication that more funds will be injected into the investment expenditures, which will lead to the creations of employment opportunities within the state. Concerning the completions of ongoing projects within the state, I want to appreciate the governor for him deeming fit to give a reasonable percentage of the scarce resources of the state to the completions of ongoing projects that were initiated by the previous administration. These laudable initiatives makes him different and outstanding from immediate past administrators. Mr. Speaker, for Lagos State to achieve its smart city project, there is a need for us to invest heavily on transportation. A state in the United States of America, to be specific, New York, subsidized their public transport sector to the tune of 25% of our annual budget. Also, in South Africa and Brazil, and other developed nations do subsidize their public transport system. We can take a lead from Nigeria and to specific in South Africa by allocating a reasonable percentage to our public transport system. Also, on the areas of security, Section 14, subsection 2B states that security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of the government. Fellow colleagues, there is a need for us to encourage our own baby, which is Neighborhood Watch Corps, by making adequate funds available for them to discharge their duty expectedly. The amount proposed in this year's budget is not enough for this agency to discharge their duty. I'm calling on the Appropriation Committee to look into this and make enough funds available for them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Jim.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Hello, colleague. Good afternoon. I'm not going to represent the budget the way the governor has done. I'm afraid I've just done that rightly, Mr. Speaker. But, however, it's obvious and apparent in the budget that capital project is 62%, while recurrent is 38%. And I think this is a good development for the state. Apart from that, Mr. Speaker, the ongoing or uncompleted project that was enumerated in the omnibus. I feel strongly that the standing committee should sit up on all these matters, in the sense that some of the envelope allocated to each MDAs may not, in the recess, quantify whatever is expected to be done in the budget. I will cite the LMDDP, which is the Lagos Metropolitan Development Project, that is tagged under World Bank as abandoned projects. Previous budgets, they have over 2.something billion in their covers, though that was literally ordered to other ministries and parastatals. But what was allocated as fund to them here is not, less than 1 billion. And I don't think that can do much in what we expected to do in the budget. Because except if we are going to MTF it, we spread it across the subsequent budget. And Mr. Speaker, it will be good I call the attention of the standing committee or the appropriation committee to what it was tagged in this budget as historical outstanding liability. In bracket or in parentheses on classified projects. So certain amount of money were allotted, and I think there is need for clarification of money that was allotted so that we know the purpose and the intent of that very particular money. Well, but by this, Mr. Speaker, I said this earlier, it's a good development. The capital is 62%, the recurrent is 38%. It's a good development for the state and we appreciate it. But they should extend the road construction the way they are doing in Agege. I'm not saying I need a flyover, but we need something that is motorable in my constituency, especially one particular road that links the whole community together. Father in the urban road is important, and it should be captured because it's one of the World Bank abandoned projects. It should be captured in this.
So you want to rewrite the budget on your own? Honorable Shulukun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also commend the governor for bringing this budget timely, and also the fact that capital to recurrent is 68, 62 to 38. However, I still have issues with the recurrent. Let me say that when you look at the document given to us, year 2020 appropriation bill page 34, you find that the personnel cost is left at 167. For 2019, it was 169. But as at January to September, only 70 billion had been expended. However, we may not dwell much on this because we do not know for certain what the increment will be in the new minimum wage. However, when you go to the page 42 of the same document, you find that on overhead, it was 124 billion plus in year 2019. In year 2020, it was 167 billion. However, January to September, year 2019, only 68 billion had been expended. Then what is responsible for the increment to 167? Is it because the budget size has increased, so must overhead increase? No, I don't think so. We cannot continually fund passion. We cannot continually fund passion. The only thing you can do is to say that what is the inflationary rate, and then you can add the inflationary rate. They have not even spent the 124 billion proposed in year 2019. If we extrapolate further, for 68 billion as at September, it's just going to be at 223 billion, about 90-something billion for the end of the year. Now taking it to 167, I think that, however, don't forget that this budget has deficit funding. How do we now continually going to borrow and fund overhead? I think.
But what if it is a provision for the increment in salaries?
No, I've said that. I on recurrent overhead and personnel. I said the personnel because we do not know what they will agree. You can leave it at for their proposal, which is 167. We do not touch that. However, on overhead, the second part of the recurrent, they cannot continually just increase that astronomically. We should we should do something about it. Even if we want maintain the same budget size, the money can still be used on capital expenditure. This should just be my contribution. I do not have problems with the capital or budget size. I just felt that what had been expended on the capital, 139 billion on is a little bit low for this year. Something urgently must be done if we must increase productivity, if we must increase the health of our people and improve its productivity and GDP. There must be deliberate, conscious effort to increase capital expenditure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Jude.
Good afternoon, my speaker and my colleagues. My opinion here, from what I've seen, is actually the budget size for next year, 2020, has been increased by over 25%, which, when you look at it, is a positive way of believing that 2020 will be better off. But if I can look back to what has happened this year, 2019.
Can you please make use of the mic?
If we can compare what we are projecting for 2020 against 2019, the year we are into, you will discover that the performance of this year is not good enough. However, we have still increased the size of the budget from 800 and something billion to 1.16 trillion. How do we make up for that? Yeah, my colleague is positive that we are likely to make it up. But if you look at page 1 here, when you look at even the Lagos State Inland Revenue Services, for this year alone, 500 billion has been budgeted for them to generate. For next year, 500 billion have been budgeted for them to generate. For this year, it was 448 plus billion that was allocated to them. The question here is, what did they achieve? So if we look at it, how can they make it up? For me, it's not a matter of increasing your budget size. How do we fund it? Quite well, from also the figures I'm looking here, page 1 as well, you can see already we have what they call balance from loan proceeds. One is 400 billion already there, and another one balance from bond issuance, 75 billion. Indirectly, if you add it, you can see that the deficit finance for next year budget has increased by those figures. But the position they are showing us is about 97.5 billion. But the actual fact is that it's more than that. So I think the executive should, maybe by the time the appropriation committees meet with the respective ministries and MDAs, they need to explain to us how are they going to achieve this. Because as far as I'm concerned, this for me is just like, normally it's a projection. But we need to ensure that this projection is a little bit realistic, so that we will not have a situation whereby you have a wide gap between performance and projected figures. Then I also say, from our past experience, from what we have gone through, the ministries, if you watch, they have increased some of their revenue targets. They have increased it. The truth is that where they also have the ability, do they have the ability to generate those figures they have increased for them, compared with what that happened 2019, this very year. So I think all of us have to face the reality. And the economy is not smiling. Most business organizations I know are not doing too well. So how do we achieve that? Thank you very much, sir.
Honorable Ogundibu.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I think I agree with most of the analysis entered by Honorable Majid. But going into the practical illustration of all these budgetary provision for 2020, there is need for us to look at the economic indices that is being premised on. You look at the fact that the whole of budget size has been increased, and when you look at the increment, vis-a-vis the revenue that we are going to make use of, you look at the total revenue for the projected budget figure for 2020, you discover that the strong percentage of the revenue expected for 2020, over 80%, is being expected from the IGR. And the IGR, you know, taking over 82% of the total revenue, while the federal transfer is talking about 17%, 17.something%. That really shows that there is serious burden on our IGR, expected income on the IGR. And to get this thing done, you look at where we are presently. Where we are presently on our IGR for the last 3 quarters, you know, from January to September, we've not been able to do 70%. And we have increased it already, and we are expecting to get to that point where we are going to get 82% plus from the IGR. It looks a little bit difficult until they come around to explain to us how they are going to achieve this. Else, we're still going to come up and look at the size of the budget that has been increased, you know, to 1.16 trillion plus as just a sort of a wide vision that may not be able to be attainable at the end of the day. What I will just advise that we look at all the activities, like my colleague said, most of the people that are going to be responsible for the payment of various taxes, it's not about increasing the tax net, but the increment in the tax of healthy businesses that is still available. You know, most of the business around are very sick as we are talking, and for them to be able to pay returns, you know, even while the LRS are doing their tax audit, most of the addresses of the businesses, they were not able to locate them again. And that really shows that there is no way we can really have much money from the IGR that we are talking about. So we look at whatever thing they are bringing and be able to look at how the methodology they are going to deploy to generate this income. Very key, because that is what will really give credence to the increase in the budget size. Thank you.
Honorable Togo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I want to go by your speech that total disclosure. With what we're seeing, I can see a reasonable disclosure, but well, maybe with questioning we can know how total. With the analysis here, when you look at the ratio of the capital to recurrent, I still believe we are on the right path. And when we look at the core capital of about 427 billion, we can regard this as truly budget of awakening. And if that is, in as much as we are working towards the capital, making life more meaningful to our people, improving the infrastructure, we must equally work towards generating the revenue to spend. The LIRS has to double their efforts. Then other revenue source perform poorly this year, about 38% performance. which is very low, which makes the money coming in to be very abysmal, and we couldn't meet the target. And the finance deficit of our 97 billion, I still feel is still okay because of the time value of money. Most of those projects that were to execute this year, if you fail to execute it, a project that will cost about 10 billion today may become about 15 billion next year. So if we are funding those gap with deficits, I'm not against it. We can borrow money to do meaningful projects that will benefit members of the public at the longer run. And when you look at major projects that the government is planning to do, the Badagry Expressway, the Agege Flyover, dualization of Lekki Express Road, then the strategic roads in our constituents, you will discover that those funds that are going to be, allocated for capital projects are worthy. So, Mr. Speaker, I still feel we are on track. We only need to work harder to generate more funds and channel those funds for a capital project that will be more meaningful, that will bring life to our people. Thank you very much.
Honorable Rosimolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague, good afternoon. Mr. Speaker, I look at the structure of this budget. I look at the prayers of the governor of Lagos State. I look at the size of the budget. I look at the reality on the ground in terms of revenue performance. And I can see some level of discordance. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, when you look at the real revenue generated in 2019, or as projected till December 2019, using the January-September figures, the state they didn't do more than 643 billion against 873 budget size. And that was the reason the state had to go to the bond market and commercial institutions for additional 100 billion and 150 billion respectively. And if you are going to use that budget, Mr. Speaker, the size in terms of the revenue, because budget is predicated on revenue, no two ways about it, Mr. Speaker, and to run away from the incidences of reordering, then this budget is overambitious. Because when I look at what we need, including the financing gap for 2020 budget size, we will still need about 443 billion if we are to reenact what we performed in 2019. And that means we go borrow. And today, the threshold is 40%, and we are on the 29%. If you now go and borrow 443 billion in 2020, that means we will close to that threshold. Then, can we realize that? I know Mr. Governor is very, very ready to work. But I don't call this budget awakening. It's a budget of great leap. Leap more than human imagination. Because the reason is this, Mr. Speaker. There are some prayers of the governor which I reason with. Education is good for us because our children must have qualitative education. We are talking about health. It needs for us to be in health insurance, so there will be universal health coverage for all Lagosians. It's great. But then there are other things that are very important. In these current years, we are borrowing 250 billion naira for infrastructure. And all this machinery to generate more money are not really in place. And we must give moratorium for the generation of those revenue. We can't just say we are coming on board now and we start generating immediately. You give Lagosians. Things have gone pretty bad. Like Honorable Ogundim said, many companies are comatose, and it's these companies we are going to tax. You can't tax poverty, you only tax prosperity. What do we need to do? Let us reinflate the economy. Let us reinflate through entrepreneur trust fund. Let us give money to people and let them do business. Let us have integrated transportation system that's going to be seamless. Water plus road plus land. Let it be integrated. Let us harness the water transportation and rail transportation that are masses oriented. And I think from there we go to the next level. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, I believe that if you are going to keep to the MTBF of 2020 projection, which stands at 978 billion, I would have reasoned with the size of the budget. But going to 1.3 million. Mr. Speaker, remember Governor Ambo, they brought a budget of 1.3 trillion in 2018. At the end of the day, they could not achieve it because it was over ambitious. They had to come back to 873 trillion. We are going to that again. We want to admonish the Committee on Budget to look into this dispassionately and give the accurate budget. Otherwise, mark my word, before the end of 2020, they will come for reordering. And reordering is illegal. That is the admission of the failure of the budget. But if you are going to have a balanced budget, where every ministry will move at the same time, where one ministry, some ministry will be overfed and some will be starved, then it will be a lopsided budget. But if you want a balanced budget, a holistic budget, then the size of this budget must come down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Sakasholaja.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues. Good afternoon. Well, I quite agree with what Honorable Fatai has said and Honorable Lowoku, Honorable Ogundimu, but I'm looking at it from another perspective. The most problem that they have in 2018 and 2019 is the issue of land use charge. They could not able to generate anything on land use charge, and if you look at the type of property we have in Lagos State, we can generate more than the targeted figure for revenue for 2020. They need to go back to the round tables, look at it, what are they collecting before? Let the valuation officers work as it is due. Don't do the provisional assessment. Don't just assess the property on the face value. Let them go deep inside the property. Let them assess it according to the value and qualities of the property. That's number one. Number two, in terms of revenue collection, there's a lot of loophole. Somebody wants to pay revenue, you are residing in Ekpe, they say you come to Lagos at Ikeja to come and pay. By the time you see somebody in between, you can give the money to him, and that money is on our own. Number three, if you look at the issue of the variance between the revenue of 2018 and 2019, I don't use 2019 to judge because of the election or whatever. But in 2009, 2020, no election, no anything whatsoever, we should consolidate. Based on this, what they need to do, we need to look at what they give to us is just mere list of revenue and expenditure, but we have to look at the monitor. Get the monitors, look at the monitors. The envelope they are giving to them are the appropriation. We cannot adjust it. Give somebody, let me give an example like what the Deputy Speaker have said, that the overhead costs are given to them is not justified. It's justified because you are using money to generate money. But the question there is that somebody have not able to access a particular figure of money in 2018, 2019, and yet in 2020 you increase it. Well, maybe because they have now made decision that they want to work and they want all the MDAs to work as a team. If they can do that, believe me honestly, the budget is a realistic budget. That's my solution, sir.
Honorable Abiru.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, fellow members. I also wish to say that the 2020 budget, the budget of awakening, is, speaks a lot about the direction with which the governor actually wants to go in terms of development of Lagos in the area of health, area of education, the general public order. They are actually all in order. And Lagos, being the center of excellence, I think year in, year out, there's a need for us to continue to strive to be better than it was. We've made comparison here, and it is very essential. There cannot be 2020 without 2019. There cannot be 2019 without 2018. And we should also look at the trend that we have seen. The budget, in my opinion, too, is quite ambitious because the bulk of the funding of the budget is meant to come from internally generated revenue. And apart from LIRS, the revenue generating MDAs too have not showed much performance in 2019, the outgoing year. What is the guarantee that these revenues expected therefrom, can meet up the target for the 2020 budget? Now, it is also very important for us that we should, as much as possible, move close to having a balanced budget, rather than having a budget that we need to continuously fund, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I agree, there is nothing wrong in borrowing, to fund the budget. But again, why can't we work within what is reasonable for us to, what we can reasonably generate? And what this eventually leads to is giving the governor the discretion to implement the budget the way he likes, because that is actually what has happened in the past. For instance, somebody spoke about the neighborhood watch. Indeed, in 2019 budget, there was a subvention of 350 million that is meant for that neighborhood watch. All that they got was less than 25 million. And the same thing, the same figure is repeating itself now. In some, because this is a law, and the law is meant to be implemented to the letter. When this House approves subvention for a particular agency of government, it is considered that that agency needs such subvention to perform its duty and responsibility. Now, how do you explain when you now see agencies of government not collecting any subvention at all, as indicated here? So for me, I think there is so much to do by both the Finance Committee and the Committee on Appropriation, to the extent that we really need to look at the financing of this year's budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the impediment of the budgets by Mr. Governor is very, very laudable, very interesting, and just as most of my colleagues have said a lot of things, but I just want to go to very few areas. One of the areas is the debt servicing, which the ratio is 55% to 45%. And when we look at this, it is very, very germane. It is very, very interesting when we say, well, we are nearing servicing all our debt. But when we look at what we are going to generate, or where the money is coming from, then we will now say there is lacuna. And that is what to say 38% in last year budget, in this year budget performance does not even, is nothing to write home about. Again, I observe from the budget, in the last year, this year budget, which was presented last year, there is nothing like counterpart funding. But in this year, we have counterpart funding to the tune of almost, excuse me, almost $25 billion. But meanwhile, in the last budget, nothing like that. Again, I need to be schooled, but I saw something which really baffles me, and that is on page 4, and that is special expenditure. It was written twice, and the total amount is about 14 to 15 billion. I don't know why do we need such amount, but still, we see the impediment of Mr. Governor, which wanted to give life to the masses, especially in the area of improvement of public environment and social amenities. But notwithstanding what was voted for education, it has a little bit moved to about 33 billion compared to what it used to be. And with the rider of improving the standard of education, especially in the early child education. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Setnaji.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm so concerned about some aspect of the budget, but I'm very, very happy too to have seen that the emphasis of the governor, which has been consistent with Lagos State policy, is to have a budget that's, the recurrent and the capital expenditure has been very wonderful. In fact, Lagos State has been performing excellently well in that regard. And that is why I want to commend this budget. But this is the population of 20-something million people, having a budget of 1 trillion naira. And the essence of budget, obviously, is to affect the populace positively. That's why the key areas, like provision of infrastructure, education, and the lives are very, very key. And I want to support the provision which have emphasized the fact that the reconstruction or the maintenance of our roads. Because the state of our roads is I don't know, I'm sure of words I've just say deplorable. And this budget, from what I've seen, I've not emphasized too many new roads. It's only mostly about reconstruction and maintenance of our roads, which is a very good thing. Because if we reflect this economy, if we stimulate the economy by providing infrastructure, then the quality of life of the people will improve. That is why I strongly support every aspect of this budget. But the areas that gives me a lot of concern, I don't want to mention my area, because I know that the level of infrastructure is terrible. And the provision in the budget for Badagry Expressway is limited to Okoko. And the main area that is giving us concern most is from sorry, what do you call this place? There's this place they call Igwe down to that area. Although the federal government is doing something about it, but we want the state government to intervene so that our life can be better. But by and large, this is a wonderful budget. And if you're talking of a population of something million people, 1.3 trillion is nothing to write home about. Even though we have challenges, but I still believe that because of the revenues are not coming in as expected, that is why people are being pessimistic about the size of the budget. But believing that we will work harder and we'll be able to generate more revenue, things will get better for Lagos State. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Lumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this budget. Of course, it's a very, very optimistic budget indeed that comes in with any new government. So I think Mr. Governor is so optimistic that he believes that this budget size is achievable. Well, I also want to commend the fact that the capital aspect of the budget is so large that if it is adequately implemented, will bring better things for our dear state. But my critical view of the budget shows and reflects the thinking of the author of the budget as it is, and I think they have looked into ways of improving the IGR by providing means, that is technological innovation, to improve and block leakages to ensure that our IGR comes up to, actually implement the budget. Secondly, they have also looked at alternative financing through PPP. I even read in the budget that they expected about 3 billion revenue from PPP arrangement. I see this as optimistic, and if it is done as anticipated, will actually bring in better things for us in Lagos. I also appreciate the fact that there is policy implementation on M&E, that is monitoring and evaluation, to ensure compliance with the budgetary performance. If all these things is done, we can always count on what we call time value of money. Borrowing as it is not all that good, but if monies are borrowed and utilized for what is meant for, I think we will get to the promised land. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Shah, lastly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must say a very big thank you to my colleagues that have dissected this budget proposal by Mr. Governor. First of all, I must say that, well, the 1.071 total revenue projection can seem a bit very big, but the reality is that this government is trying to be very transparent, because this government has carried over the sum of 175 billion, like Honorable Dimogu mentioned, from the 250 billion that you are approving for them this year. They're carrying it over into next year. What is done in the past is that, at least in the last 4 years, is you will not be told that that money is being carried forward. They will continue to spend it on 2019 budget, within their budget, but this government is only trying to be transparent. That is why they are carrying the 175 billion forward. So if you strip the 1.071 trillion of 175 billion, the true budget size, the true total internally generated size of this budget is 896 billion naira, which is 12% over the 777 billion projected for the year 2019. That, I think, is reasonable. But the only problem is, with the fact that this same government has approached this house for a deficit in revenue just this month, that they're saying they cannot meet that 799, yet they are still increasing the revenue by 100 billion. I think they would need to come and explain to us how they intend to achieve this. I know they've hit the ground running. I know they are poised to try and bring money in from the various revenue-generating MDAs, but I still think, personally, that it would have been nice if they maintained the same revenue projection for last year and just see how they can achieve that before moving forward. But, well, they must have something to say. We would expect them to come and give us information on that. Also, there is the deficit funding. Sorry, I also must appreciate this government for doing something also a bit different in the last 5 years. They have actually captured the total amount of money they want to spend on deficit funding. It's enormous. You have 185 billion naira for capital repayment and 40 billion naira for recurrent repayment, totaling 226 billion. So out of that 1 trillion, you're looking at 226 billion naira is going for debt servicing. This is instructive because your capital, that means the capital to recurrent ratio of 62 to 38 is not 62 to 88 because part of it is debt. Actually, it is, if you want to get true percentage, you will be getting 19% for debt, 46% for capital, and 35% for recurrent. But at least Lagosians should know that Lagos State is not as rich as we want to believe ourselves, so that people need to pay their taxes. Yes, this budget is achievable. Yes, the, what we call the revenue, internally generated revenue to state GDP in Lagos is 3.6% according to these figures. Actually, it's 3.0. Nigeria is 6.1. Meaning that Lagos State has not generated as much revenue that Lagos State is capable of. Other countries are generating in the range of 12%. There are countries generating 34% ratio, that is tax to GDP ratio, but Lagos State is just doing 3%. So we need to expand, this government needs to expand, if it's going to get this budget to work, they need to expand their tax base. When we say expand tax base, we're not talking about increasing the taxes for anybody, but people that are earning money, they work the labor force of Lagos is put at about 8 million, yes. If more people pay their taxes, be it 100 naira, 200 naira, as the case may be, the state can generate a lot more fund. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, I think I'm just going to put a word of advice out there for this administration. This is achievable. They've not done anything that is outside what is doable. They're being transparent, but the act of collection of revenue and blocking of wastages within the system should be a priority to them. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your position on this year 2020 budget. And I'm of the view that the year 2019 budget is not a tidy yardstick to be used to measure 2020 budget. Looking back to when 2019 budget was signed, the implementation and also other sources of revenue, the political situation of then actually had very negative effect on 2019 budget. The provision of 1.16 trillion is not something out of place if we can put our act together, as observed by some of us, most especially agencies responsible for revenue generation, can take it and look at what they've been doing and improve the tax. The state, definitely we can always get to what we want. And I think we should give support to the executive to achieve this proposal. With our support, definitely we can get what we really want. Looking at what is on ground for this administration in terms of infrastructure, I want to agree that we need a volume of amounts far beyond what we have projected for, but it is good to start somewhere. And on the side, those who raise concern about the increment on overhead, definitely if you project to increase your revenue generation, definitely you must make provision, for the procedure to actualize your targets. I think it all depends, and I think we should leave that to the Committee on Economic Planning and for Finance. While meeting with the MDAs, they should be able to establish if truly we can meet up with these targets or otherwise. And I think they have capability to address these questions that have been raised. In view of this, I hereby commit the 2020 budget to House Committee on Economic Planning and Finance to report back in 6 weeks. Majority Leader.
Distinguished colleagues, having come this far into this proceeding, I have the approval of the Right Honorable Speaker to move that the House adjourns till Tuesday, the 19th day of November at 10 o'clock. I so move.
Honorable Nuruddin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion has been moved by Majority Leader.
Before question is put, there will be a short meeting immediately after sitting. All in favor say aye. Those against no, the ayes have it. This House stands adjourned till Tuesday, 19 November 2019 at 10 a.m. prompt. I rise.